Hi, welcome to today and today's topic, which is compassion, kind of a continuation from a recent post I had where I talked about how compassion, what it means, and how it's one of the things that I value the most deeply as I interact with people in my life or the world around me. Compassion is the ability to meet somebody in the moment they're in, free of judgment of how they may have found themselves in that circumstance, and then support them through it. We can do this physically or energetically because we are both a physical and an energetic being, right? So compassion. Today I want to do something a little different though. I would like to share with you two stories from my own life where I was able to provide compassion in very different ways, in very different scenarios to people. Now, certainly, I have been the recipient of numerous acts of compassion and kindness in my own life, and I am so thankful for those, and I hope they keep coming my way. But today I want to talk to you about when I had to choose compassion. The first story is really the active recognition that sometimes life feels frustrating and overwhelming, and you have to remind yourself to choose compassion. And the second story is a story about a client of mine and self-compassion and what that looks like, because we all need a little dose of self-compassion. Maybe not even a little dose, a huge reminder. I know for myself, I'm always evolving and growing and continuing to strengthen the self-compassion within my own self. Okay, so first story. This one took place a number of years ago. I'm an RN, or a registered nurse, and so this took place back in the day when I was actively working in the hospitals, okay? So I had just come off of a double shift, so I worked the evening and then through the night, and my sister and I in the morning had walked up to the local grocery store to get me some breakfast before I went home and took a nap for a couple of hours. And as we were leaving the grocery store, I saw out of the periphery of my vision sort of a scene beginning to develop at one of the registers. And I knew instinctively that this was a medical need and that I could be of service. And I was exhausted. I hadn't had a great shift. I was tired. I just wanted to get home and eat. And so I needed to choose compassion in that moment. And now, I fully intended at every single phase of this, once recognizing the scene, that I would go and be supportive in the ways that I could. But first I turned to my sister as I handed her my groceries and just said through the voice of exhaustion, "Sometimes I don't want to help." And that was all I needed. I just needed to say that, to acknowledge that to myself. And I turned and walked toward the situation, ready and free of judgment to be present for that situation. And there was a woman who was really struggling at the service counter. She was very disheveled looking, running her hands through her hair. And I recognized in this moment from my training that this was a diabetic emergency. And so I was able to ask her, "Are you diabetic?" She was barely, but able to communicate that she was. And with that knowledge, I was able to put in place the actions that were necessary through the cashier calling the emergency services, through other people helping me get some fast sugar, and through checking her blood sugar myself. So all of that medical situation turned out perfectly. She was able to get the help that she needed, and emergency services arrived and supported her. The reason I want to share this story, though, is because of the circumstances of everybody else that was involved. As I was walking towards the situation, before I intervened with assistance, I could visibly see compassion not present, rather fear and nervousness about what was going on. The cashier was visibly backing away. The people in the line behind her had either left the line or gone to a different aisle. There was active ignoring going on because everyone knew there was a situation that needed some assistance, but nobody felt confident in how to help. The moment that I was able to take the leadership position and that I could open the door of compassion and care for this person, releasing judgment of what was going on and acknowledging she needed help, I had so many helpers. The cashier was there and available. People returned to the line asking me what was necessary. Compassion instead of fear took over. And sometimes that needs to happen. Sometimes compassion needs a leader to be contagious. So I just invite you in with that knowledge to know that you can be the leader of compassion. Sometimes we have to choose it in our life. Okay? I'm going to make an obvious statement here. As I said in the beginning, compassion can be physical or energetic because we are physical and energetic beings. If you are physically or emotionally not safe in that situation, if someone is hurting you or being mean to you, exit the scene. We do not apply compassion when our safety is at risk. You can apply compassion energetically later on. Once you're safe, you can take a deep breath and send that person compassion for what in the world made them that mean in the first place, right? But if you are in a physical place, first make sure that you feel safe and then determine what your actions could be. In that scenario, I was able to feel safe and be the leader of compassion, and it got to be contagious. That happens in life. So whether it's a smile or a hug or just eye contact, meet somebody in the kindness that's free of judgment, that is compassion. All right, story number 2, really quick here, is with a client of mine, and this is more present day. And as I said, this is about self-compassion. So this might sound very familiar to a lot of you out there. I know this sounds familiar to me. And this is a story of how we actively engage with the energy of compassion within us, because we have, again, that energy of compassion within. So this client walked into one of our sessions and she felt overwhelmed by everything that was going wrong in her life that day and those weeks prior to being there. She was a busy mom of 3 young kids. Her relationship wasn't going the way that she thought it could and should be going. And her body was now cropping up with some ailments that were totally unexpected and making her nervous. She felt this must have been her fault. All of it. Somehow this is her fault, that she's a bad mom, that her body isn't working, that her relationship is struggling. And so, because this was an energy work session, we were able to actively engage with the energy of compassion that already lives inside of her. We just had to bring it closer to the surface, right? Bring that energy of compassion closer to the surface so that she could begin to see the words of wisdom that it had to share, the kindness, to release the betrayal and the berating thoughts that were going on in her head. So the energy of compassion, as it opens up inside of you, as it opened up inside of her, opens up possibilities that are free of judgment. How do I want to be the parent that I know I am? What are the conversations that I'd like to have with my partner? How can I join with my body and how it's trying to support me instead of getting angry with it? Compassion opens us to the possibility of how we can move forward instead of being stuck in the judgment of why we're there in the first place. And so self-compassion was her friend that day. And I got to be a supportive guide in bringing that energy closer to the surface. So she then could take it back and harness it herself. Okay? She actually beautifully wrote a couple of words about our session not long after that. And I want to share them with you right now. I'm on my little 3x5 card. So I'm going to read them. It just said, she, meaning me, she picked me up, dusted me off, showed me to me, and handed me back to myself. Because here's the thing. Sometimes we all need to just be picked up in our tough moments, have somebody dust us off and say, hey, that's not you. Come on now. Let me show you what I see in the beauty of who you are. Let me show you this compassion. Let me remind you of the beauty that you are and how you can engage with that. And then hand you back to that person so you can keep living the beauty of who you are. Because that is the joy of compassion. If you are a leader in self-compassion with yourself, if you are a leader in compassion with others, it's contagious. It spreads like wildfire. The more you believe in kindness and the more you can interrupt the words of frustration and self-betrayal, the more that you can find compassion for yourself. And ultimately, if you are compassionate to yourself, it's much easier to be compassionate with others. So I invite you on in this journey. Thank you for sticking with me through these stories of choosing compassion. And choosing compassion internally as well. Okay, I hope you have a beautiful day. You are a blessing, and I'm glad you are here. Thank you.